let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's check out this election. So we are now 6 days away. Trump v. Harris. And things have been getting very bullish for Trump here in the last few weeks. I mean, I think Kamala had her little bull market there whenever she was first announced the candidate and before she really got, to talking in earnest and stuff like that. Now that she has, and now that Trump has kind of hit a little bit of a stride with going on all these different podcasts and stuff, some people think that's great. Some people don't like it, whatever. I think it's more so Kamala hurting herself with the interviews than she's doing, more than maybe Trump is making all these amazing moves. I think it's really just her speaking more, honestly, that's maybe flipping things around. But we are 6 days out. Next Tuesday is the big day. Looking at our poll, 89% of people think that Trump is going to win at this point. I would tend to agree. And again, it's basically just because I think in the summer, I really started to feel strongly about him winning this. And this was when Biden, I believe, was still around. Not that he's, gone yet or anything. But, whenever he had his the assassination attempt back in July, that was obviously the first time when it's like, man, I mean, regardless of what you think, like people are going to rally around him, just some of the iconic photos and stuff that came out of that and everything. And then, of course, Democrats swap out the candidate. Kamala has her little bull market of, being announced the candidate and doing all these different things. Actually, not really doing all these different things. She wasn't really doing interviews or anything. And again, like I said, she started to, and things started to swing the other way. And I had some doubts during that period, but now I feel like the pendulum is swinging back. I do overall think that many people in the country who were totally turned off to Trump in 2016, maybe even 2020 as well, are now becoming more open to it for many reasons. Number one, that the Democrats continue to just trot out, absolutely horrible candidates instead of letting people, whether you agreed with Bernie Sanders' politics or thought he was a lunatic, he should have been the candidate in 2016. I mean, he was who people actually wanted it, and they installed Hillary Clinton. So you know how that goes. And they've continued that pattern basically of like, who do we think get elected over who would actually get elected? And now you've got Trump pulling from the Democrats. Obviously, Tulsi Gabbard has been disenfranchised, really, or interested in being a Democrat for some time. She's basically a full-blown Republican now. She's been awesome. I've supported pretty much everything that she's done. RFK, of course, eventually coming over, who had a huge base behind him. A lot of people are pissed off about that. They really liked RFK and feel kind of politically homeless at this point, I think. I just think all those factors, though, people like that coming over to Trump, I don't know if Trump doing Rogan is kind of more of just a redundant thing maybe for him, because a lot of that viewership may have already been voting for him. But I feel like the pendulum is swinging back to Trump's way. And who knows what actually happens on election night in these cities. But what do you feel about it right now, Ewok?
Well, I feel the same way. I think that the team that he's put around himself, of people and what, especially RFK, I think he's a big one. People don't understand the levels and the insanity and the garbage that's in our food.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, to the extent of, these companies make food for America and then they have to make it differently for when they export it to other countries, because they're not allowed to put half the stuff in it because it's poison, it's garbage. So I think that's huge. I think the Rogan podcast was beneficial. I do, because he sat there for 3 hours and got to just kind of speak. I found it interesting. What did he call it? He was weaving his stories. Is that what he
even admitted to it? It was funny. They joked about that like numerous times. Yeah. And Trump like copped to it. And I found that interesting.
Yeah. He said what he was doing. And I found it interesting how he just kind of wove the stories. And then he finally did get back to a couple of things. The one he didn't really get back to was, what was that first day like, not knowing what the hell you're doing, right? And showing up at the White House and having to appoint, what was it, 10,000 people or whatever crazy number of appointments that he had to make. I thought it was good, and I do wish that Kamala would have done it. She started setting stipulations where he had to go to her,
Right.
could only do it for an hour. And there was just, some weird things that were thrown in there. And I don't think it would have been as genuine of a conversation being rushed like that. So I did feel that it was a genuine conversation. You got to hear him, and the one thing that I found interesting was when he was talking about the Lincoln bedroom and how cool it was that, and he knew that the son's name. You know what I mean? How many people take care? It's just he cares, right? I think you got to see a little bit more of a genuine side of him, where not that people that have already made their mind up are going to change their mind at this point. But I thought it was good for people who may have been like, well, I'm not really a fan of this side. I think I'm going to go with this side because we know what we're getting, at least. Even if I don't like the mean tweets or whatever part goes with it, we at least know what we're going to get. And I think you got to see a more genuine side than the traditional
politician
questions, political questions, and the slamming. I don't think he really slammed the other side a whole lot in that conversation. There were a few comments here and there where he got some digs in, but
he mainly talked about people that he had to work with that were called idiots numerous times. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And now we know why they've come out speaking badly about him, is because he didn't like them and he didn't like their policies. And he probably found out that half of them were crooked, and doing things for the wrong reasons. So, it's funny how they throw and twist these things about all these people that used to work for him that have bad things to say. Well, most of them are the ones that he fired, and for good reason, because he caught them doing shady shit. So, I thought it was good. I thought it was a good interview, a good conversation more than anything. And I do still worry. I think the majority of people have are voting on Trump's side. But as you can clearly see now, there's reports of many people voting that shouldn't be, reports of hundreds of ballots coming in from the same address. And then you look up this address and it's a social center or something like that. I think they're probably going to try to get as many cheats in there as they can, and because they know they're losing.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that's going to happen. There's no preventing it, really. But I do think what I'm wondering is if he may build so much of a lead where it's so far out of grasp that there's not really that ground to make up, kind of like in 2016. Like, what really could you have done? In terms of his interview, I mean, you said like about him caring and a lot of the things he was observant of and has knowledge of and is aware of and stuff like that. The thing about him is, even if he doesn't care, like, many politicians like don't really give a shit about certain stuff and just have to like, pretend to or whatever. He at least does his homework on everything. Like, I mean, you can tell that he's been there. You can tell he knows who the major players are and is educated in all these different angles of things, and you could tell that he's experienced it and been there and stuff like that. And he doesn't pull punches, and I do think it was definitely to his benefit. Something that's interesting to me, I heard some pundits talking about the other day, not like legacy media ones, but a podcast I listen to occasionally, Crystal and Sauger, that those two guys used to be on Rogan quite a bit too. They're kind of independent-ish, but they were talking the other day, just saying like whether or not the whole like podcast circuit idea, which isn't just Trump. I mean, she is doing it too. She either was already or is going to be on that. I think she was on with Shannon Sharp, whose podcast is apparently pretty big now. But Crystal on there was talking about her thinking that this isn't a good road to go down necessarily, that you just like do a podcast for 3 hours with somebody that you maybe largely agree with instead of being challenged. I'm honestly in favor of it because, especially with a guy like Rogan, I mean, Rogan obviously is going to agree a little bit more with Trump at this point. I mean, Rogan has spent the better part of 4 to 6 years at this point shitting on what extreme leftoids have been doing, not meaning that he's never even voted for Trump. I mean, he has said, who he's voted for the last couple elections. I think it was Gary Johnson and Joe Jorgensen. So while Rogan maybe didn't give Trump all these hard-hitting things, he did circle him back to answer his original questions here and there. And Rogan isn't going to do that. Rogan, and he wouldn't, honestly, I really don't think he would have done it with Kamala either. And I know we don't have the benefit of knowing that, but like what you just said is exactly right. Here's the thing that I don't understand about the Kamala thing. Like, Rogan is the entity here. Like, he is the one that has the biggest platform and podcast in the world. He said that, I was just listening to his pod that came out today with those two British comedians. He was saying that her campaign reached out to him. They reached out to him first. He was like, absolutely, yeah, I'd love to have a conversation. You can come down, we'll go for however long you want to or whatever. And like you said, Ewok, they wanted to demand that he travel to them, which he does not do. He doesn't do that for anyone. That is not his show. He doesn't travel around podcasting with people, and that he wants it to be an organic conversation. And like you said, they were going to make it an hour long, and you know exactly what was going to happen. Like, he'd have had to go to like New York or California or something like that. There would have been all these people there, like waving off certain questions and shit. That's not what the show is about. So, I mean, you're showing right there that you're not interested in doing it the right way. So, yeah, I mean, as far as I see it, she did refuse to do the show because that's not the show. Like, and whatever, I don't think it's necessarily going to cost her. But just the other day, she was caught on a hot mic at this bar with that Whitmer woman from Michigan. And she was specifically saying that, like, well, like, shocker. Well, we're not doing very well with men. Well, like, wow, do you believe that? But you don't go on Rogan. So I don't think Rogan would have embarrassed her. Like many things that have been going on with her, I think she would have wildly embarrassed herself, if anything, because she's just, and Rogan has even said it, and I think he's 100% right. Like, she's in a tough position. I don't want to say this because I have empathy for her, but she's in a tough position. You've been thrown into here. You basically, orchestrated a coup over Joe Biden, and now you're just like thrown into the fire, and here you are. And she's not cut out for it, and she's not equipped to do it, and they should have a better candidate in there. And she's just doing what she can do. But
no, I agree. I don't think she's the right person, but apparently they had to come up with somebody, and I think they were very cornered into who they could actually pick. So this is what we got.
I think it really feels like it's swinging in Trump's direction. But again, like we said, I mean, anything can happen on election night. It's definitely going to be appointment viewing. I can't wait to watch the events roll in. But it's going to be interesting. But more importantly, from a crypto perspective, and this is something that I've been saying the last few weeks, people just need to remember, as much as Trump being elected would pretty much objectively be better for this industry, which is good because, not only are we just invested in cryptocurrency, but the whole point of cryptocurrency is self-sovereignty, holding things other than US dollars, which are permanently being devalued every single day. Or even if Trump gets elected, I mean, they're still going to be printing money. And holding cryptocurrency is something that you do purposely to check out of that financial system. So what you want to do is remember that, like, even if he doesn't get elected, this stuff isn't going away. And there's nothing that she's going to be able to do short or long term to stifle that. I know that Democrats, and namely the SEC, have been trying to stifle innovation to, continue to line their own pockets now for years. But I do think the veil is dropping on that. We have Democrats hating Gary Gensler at this point. I think even maybe Kamala or people within her group themselves have been shitting on Gensler here and there. So, the tide is probably turning on that. So if Trump somehow does not win, I mean, our bags are pumping. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So,
yeah, I don't know. Did you see the other day they discovered that like $41 billion of the climate change fund had gone missing? Basically, it was 40% of all their spending over the last 7 years is untraceable. Yeah. I thought that was very interesting and interesting timing that $41 billion has just gone missing.
Yeah.
Or unaccounted for. It's probably not missing. They probably spent it. It's just, they don't know where it got spent.
Yeah. Well, if we had this stuff on the blockchain, we might be able to figure out what happened here. But
Well, if
something
we had
tells me they wanted
voting
that
on the
money to disappear.
blockchain, if we had money or voting on the blockchain, then
Hmm.
that would
Yeah,
solve a lot of issues too. I think we would know right away who won instead of having to wait 3 or 4 days.
someday, maybe election of 2036 or something like that. We'll plan on that. We'll see. All right, so that's where we're at. Yeah, I do think we're going to get a Trump victory, but we shall see. I thought we were going to last time too, and they pulled something out of their ass. So we will see what happens here. So